Alright, well, this is more like it. Finally, after a couple of disappointing outings to the theater, finally get something that I really liked. Escape Plan, which it's kind of weird to put. It's kind of like those homage films to the 80s action movies, only it's not trying to be homage, it just is. Which is a big plus. It seems almost like it's like a direct continuation um, of that style of action into the modern genre. And I think The Expendables has a lot to do with this, and not a big surprise because of the heavy involvement by Sylvester Stallone in particular. Uh, I think he's kind of defined this possibly emerging genre if you pick it up on these action films that you know there have been a lot of homage films to the 80s action, the original Machete, for example. But this one is there seems to be these other films that they're not quite homage, but they're just like they feel like a continuation of those movies, and it's not surprising why. You've got Stallone, who's behind a lot of them. The Rambo, literally Rambo, which is Rambo 4. Naming conventions. I hope somebody who was suggesting those have been fired by now. You've got Rambo. You got The Expendables. Again, Stallone, as in the first one, the director. As in the case with Rambo 2, you got this one. He's not a director, but no doubt he had a lot of involvement in this. And you have these. They feel like they're not trying to give credit to the old ones. They're the same guys from the 80s, and with newer people that love that style of action movie, just making movies. So it feels a lot more legit. And this one feels it. It feels very much like an old school action movie, but with the modern. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be that old. It just is what it is. And I've kind of really gone off on a philosophical little point, haven't I? So, Escape Plan. It's pretty much exactly what you want, and you are happy because of that. Everyone gives her a really good performance. Except Stallone. Stallone gives his average performance, which is fine. His character is a little weirdly written. I'll get into him in a second, but I'll just kind of run through. Schwarzenegger I was really impressed with. He does a really good job in this film. And this is one of the few films that I've ever seen where he actually speaks in his native German. Uh, he's Austrian, yes, but in Austria they speak German. Because I know someone who thinks they know more than they. There's always that guy on the internet who knows way less than he thinks. Well, Schwarzenegger's from Austria. That guy says he speaks German. Obviously, they're gonna speak Austrian. Now, granted, there is an Austrian style of speaking. I speak a little German myself, and I was taught the Austrian variant, but if you go to Bavaria, they use pretty much the same. It's like American South. They're going to say y'all instead of you all. Ich, not eek. Anyway, I digress. But he gives a really good performance in this. Really impressed. He's shown some action chops here. He's got his little. He pulls off the guy that's smarter than he looks. But here's the thing, you can buy that with Schwarzenegger, because Schwarzenegger, we kind of, through his other experiences, we can buy him as an intelligent character who sit back and knows more. He is a former governor, and through that him in his political career, we saw a lot more of his that element of his private life. They got him his divorce, but also his exposure of his massive business empire. And honestly, I kind of maybe feel that maybe these two roles should have been reversed. In that, Schwarzenegger, they keep on saying his character is really smart, he's really smart, and I can buy it, that he is a smart guy, because he is an accomplished politician, because he is a very accomplished businessman who, if you follow, you find out all of a sudden, wow, he does have this massive business empire, which he basically just used his movie and his bodybuilding as his investment capital to give him money to put into other businesses such as real estate, such as transportation businesses. Basically in LA he owns all the buses. So now that we know in real life Schwarzenegger is legitly really smart, you can buy him as being just this intelligent guy that's doing a lot more thinking, a lot more conniving, planning. Although you could have gotten away with a lot of that also just watching Pumping Iron and the head games he plays with people and that. So, really, I think his character should have been switched. His character should have been the one that breaks out of prisons, and Stallone should have been the inside guy. And I think that would have worked a lot better. Uh, for that, I mean, they do kind of nail it on the head with Stallone. They go and like, yeah, you see, yeah, you're smarter than you look. I think is what they say. Um, Jim Caviezel, or Caviezel. There's that Z that like almost remains silent most of the time. He's in this. He is enjoying himself as the villain. It really comes alive. I think I've seen Person of Interest, and he plays a much more subdued character. This one he goes a little bit more over the top, and you can see he's really loose in this one. He's having some fun as the villainous warden character. Although he's not really called a warden, is he? He's just calling out the guy in charge. Sorry, I chew piece of gum here. But he's really enjoying himself. He's really going over the top with it, and to the better. I mean, he is playing with guys against Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone, and he brings it. Jesus brings it. So he's the fun element there. Yeah, he can never escape that. I mean, let's face it. What made him was playing Jesus in Passion of the Christ. So no matter what he does, it's Jesus versus the Terminator and Rambo. But there's a lot of really good additional cast members that just show up. Like really good character actors. You got Farhan Tahir, who is basically nowadays, we need someone to play a Middle Eastern guy. You go to Tahir. If you don't recall, he was the Ten Rings guy, the head terrorist in the Iron Man movie. So he's now like the go-to person for that. He's also in Elysium. He showed up there. He's kind of, he can play like the most dirty, stuck in a cave terrorist, or he can be, and which he's going for in this one, kind of, but not really. But he can play super sophisticated politician, president person, like he did in Elysium. Here he's going more the terrorist route, although apparently he's not really a terrorist, but he was involved with drug dealers who paid him to put in his prison. And we'll get to that with the plot. Amy Ryan as kind of the plot that they could have cut, except it would have made the movie really way too short. You got Sam Neill showing up for like no reasons, like rocking a beard too. He had I am not sure how they got Sam Neill for that. I mean, he hasn't done a whole lot recently. He's kind of sit back, and I guess they were just like, I don't know, Stallone. Like, it's always kind of weird who knows who in Hollywood, and like if just Stallone or Schwarzenegger knows him. And this was like, hey, dude, we're doing a movie. You want to come? Yeah, sure. Actually, with the way they shot these, these almost seem like they were just cameos that they were able to really affect. Like some of these scenes, you could tell that they may have only shot, like these guys might have only been on set for like 1, 2, maybe 3 days if they played it right with a lot of these appearances. Maybe not with Tahir, but with guys like D'Onofrio and Neil and Vinnie Jones and such. They didn't have to be necessarily out there as long. But yeah, he's here as a doctor who they somehow convince. They figure if you're gonna have this like heartless organization, you figure you could find a more heartless doctor than this guy who's got some real moral quibs to be your on-site doctor. Who, by the way, they really apparently respect doctor-patient confidentiality because there's never any guards in there. You figure in a place like this, they would have, it's already illegal. You figure there'd be people in there with him all the time to make sure he's not, the prisoners aren't talking stuff to the one doctor, or at least, if the doctor's required to Maybe covers identity too, so you're not sure if it's the same doctor. Yeah, I guess it's a slight flaw that they didn't anticipate. I guess in regular prison, I could buy an explanation in that in a regular prison the doctor is not so reliable because he's looking at you as some criminal. So maybe from his experience he didn't ever write about getting assistance from medical staff. I don't know. Yeah, and I mentioned it before, but yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio, he shows up as basically the business partner of Stallone. They run this consulting firm, which I guess it technically would be, and I apologize for the chewing because it's probably coming up on the audio. He's like he's the partner of this consulting firm. They do security consulting, and which consists of Stallone going into prisons and then breaking out. And apparently D'Onofrio is I guess he's basically, I'm not sure if he's the CEO technically, but it's obviously it's one of those small consulting firm type groups. But he's the financial guy. He handles the finances of the company. Stallone's the bread and butter, really. So I guess he would be the CFO. Stallone would be the actual CEO, or whatever. It's like a 5-6 person firm. I don't think the titles really matter there. But he's the brains. Of course, he winds up selling out Stallone through, and they give him some characterizations that he's germophobic and such. And I think that was supposed to come into more of a play at the end when they basically, because he screws him over, Stallone, he sticks him into prison. He's basically the one that goes, leave him there. They basically get him back by like sticking him in a container ship. Spoiler alert: sticking him in a container ship. I don't know if he's gonna to die or just really fuck with him. I guess really fuck, because apparently he screwed him over because he was going to take over he was going to become the CEO of the private group that was running this prison. I guess he wasn't going to replace Jim Caviezel. I guess he was going to stay back in the office on land. By the way, yeah, spoiler alert. Although I already knew this twist based on the trailers, because even though it didn't clearly show a ship, they saw him running around what clearly looked like the top of an oil tanker. And so I kind of from that figured out that it's going to be they're stuck on a boat. And I'll get into another reason why I thought that in just a sec. But yeah, you got him. That's basically how it ends with him, is he's stuck in a container on a boat, kind of like Stallone putting him in the exact same situation he was in. But yeah, I guess since at the end, they bring down the spoiler alert, the organization. I guess he's not making the millions he thought he was. So I guess he's already screwed that way. Vinnie Jones shows up as one of the guards. And there's another one where I could see them. He maybe only shot for a week, probably, his scenes, because of how the guards are. They kind of set up this system where normally you pick out who the guards are by knowing who they are, their faces. So this prison, apparently, Caviezel, I know I'm fucking up the name. You don't have to write a comment on it. He read Stallone, apparently, while he was doing this contract, and wrote a book about it. All his experiences. So they basically have incorporated, it was one of the core books that the warden, Caviezel's character, read when he was designing the prison. So most of Stallone's tricks are solved here. For example, the guards, and I think this is one of the more iconic things, that if this movie's going to have anything iconic about it, is those guard outfits, because they look intimidating and spooky. And they have this mannequin-looking weird, I understand why they picked it, because it looks kind of freaky and intimidating. The kind of blank expression face that goes over your face. They wear this thing so you can't identify who the guards are. Although Stallone eventually figures out by like looking at the quirks, the various guards, so he starts realizing who's who. Because the ideal is you, by not being able to know who the guards are, you don't know when they're on station, when somebody else is on station, when these people are being switched up, all that stuff. But of course, Stallone, after a while, he sits down and he eventually figures out through little quirks, okay, one guy's a little bit more heavy set. This one guard that tends to be over on the like right side of the prison, he's always walking around more, so he starts picking up and they give him names and such. But they look freaking cool. I will give them that. In fact, that's one of the things I may be like, ooh, they've got like faceless mooks, except they have faces. When I was watching it, and it looks cool. I'll give them that. But yeah, Vinnie Jones is one of those guys. He basically playing the usual crazy guy. And then 50 Cent's in there. Oh, this time he's 50 Curtis Cent Jackson. Which I guess he's realized like the rap game is like really rolling down. I think he's really trying to get into acting. So he's pulling like The Rock, which is now Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and more recently he's just going Dwayne Johnson. And that's it for like the real big cameos. Oh, by the way, director is a Mikhail Hofstrom, who hasn't really done much else except for the Cusack horror film 1408. I mean, he's got some obviously other directorial stuff to his name. Mostly stuff from his native, was he from Sweden? Yeah. So as I look as quickly, refresh, yeah, see, The Right, Shanghai, Drowning Ghost. Yeah, this is his, I guess, probably his second big Hollywood movie. Unless one of those others was a release, but I don't think it was big if it was. But yeah, the film's cool. It's got an interesting setup, but Stallone's character it's kind of interesting, although I think it needs a little bit more explanation, is that he's supposed to be like crazy smart. And just knows a lot of stuff and can figure things out. Except I don't think they really give a good explanation why, because they give him his backstory, and they give him actually a good motivation as to why someone would do this for a living. In that they say he was a lawyer, and a prosecutor who sent someone to jail, and that person escaped and decided to get back at the prosecutor and killed his family. Okay, good background for why you'd go have somebody go into prison, and do this type of stuff, but I don't buy Stallone's character as a very good lawyer or prosecutor. He just doesn't have that. Again, that's why I said like they should have switched these two up with Schwarzenegger. You can kind of buy it. Schwarzenegger has that charisma element that you could kind of see him as a prosecutor a bit. You could see him as, well, let's face it, you can see him as some sort of elected official, but okay, but still you kind of wonder how he knows all this structural stuff. Maybe it would have been better if they just said he was, a really good structural engineer. He was a great master engineer, and but an escaped convict, went, while he was escaping, went broke into his house while he was at work, caught the family there, and killed the family to make sure they stayed quiet while he escaped. And he's like, okay, I'm going to now make prisons better so this doesn't happen to anybody else. Better explanation right there without really changing anything. He could have, just said, I was an engineer. Engineer would be the best one. I was a master engineer, worked for NASA or something, something along those lines. And he goes, and guy escaped from prison, killed my family, and that's why. Because he basically gives that exact speech, what I just said, to Schwarzenegger, only I was a prosecutor. Guy came back for revenge. And that kind of makes more sense now. Because you can buy Stallone as being an engineer. Engineers always like can be more socially quiet or stuff. Not a lawyer or prosecutor. There are many things Stallone can pull off. Lawyer or prosecutor, no. If it was Schwarzenegger, I can maybe buy it. And that he's just, crazy smart. So he was able to figure this stuff out. Still, I know there was some stuff I just said I was going to refer to Yeah, so then they have the whole prison set up, and I think I'll talk about Sam Neill. And for the most part, like I said, I knew from the trailer that the twist was it was going to be on a boat, because there was a couple shots in the trailer that, yeah, you could see water in the background, and the what was clearly with the guards running around outside, which is the end action scene. It looked like the top of a ship, even though it wasn't a clear shot that was a ship. And I do know there's been some like stuff in the news that's the new thing that like the Black Ops guys are doing, is they're putting people on boats and using them. It's like driving the boats around and just keeping them in their cells. And I think the unit had done an episode about that. I guarantee you how this has gotten out is that probably the people that first thought of this was a think tank, and they put a paper out on it, and people talk, and eventually it leaks its way, and then you get it gets spread around the think tank community, and then the think tank community has a bit of a crossover with Hollywood in that they'll give suggestions, and that's how it's kind of spread. It makes a lot of sense for an ideal. If you're wondering how I would like figure that out, is I did do an internship for a DC think tank that dealt with foreign policy. So I know how that stuff start to spread around, starting off very quietly, and before you know it, everyone in the think tank community, or everyone in the DC community, because they talk a lot with their counterparts, knows, and then it trickles down. But I digress. So it's kind of timely, because we just saw, there was just a story about this the other day, so good timing on their part. And it makes prison ships, classic little design. But then some of the twists then, some of the twists then was ruined of it being like, oh, they're on a boat. I could buy it. Although I guess for a boat design, they probably could have come up with some better. And the only thing I don't get with the prison is this: how they have the inmates like still interact. They still have like a cafeteria and a yard. Like they kind of have a really. I can see like the design for their cells are like all glass, and I could kind of see for that is that you can just at any time, all the different guards with all the different eyes are going to be looking at the prisoners, so they can't really ever escape. However, if you've the Supermax prison in the U.S., the ADX in Colorado, they don't have like any time where they're ever with other prisoners. They're completely isolated all the time. Never speak with anyone. They don't have that time specifically for this reason, so you can't foment plans and such. I mean, I guess you can get away with it saying that it's more expensive to do that, and it's a for-profit group, which I also don't get. That's another thing when you start thinking about the plot. You're like, wait a minute, why is this prison? How would they? Who's being sent here? You kind of get why, like, Schwarzenegger's character is that he's supposed to be part of some group that has created a way to break into banks and, like, just destroy all their finances. And so they want him to give up the head of the group. He's kind of there until he does. Okay, I could kind of see why someone would pay to have him stored there. But why the other guys? Like, the one person said he's a they said his Colombian drug partners sent him up there. If you're going to get rid of a guy, why don't you just pay for him to be, assassinated? Apparently, you've already got to the point where he's been transported to a secret prison. So, who's really paying for these guys to be just kept there all the time? Yeah, kidnapping is popular, yeah, but when the kidnapper has probably got to spend a ridiculous amount of money just to keep the guy stored, how much profit are you making off the kidnapping deal? So that's kind of like when you start thinking, like, who are the rest of these guys? I mean, if it was, because they got to do that, because if they really were all like legitimate terrorists, you wouldn't necessarily feel as bad. You're like, well, we don't like these guys. I don't know. Anyway, the action's good. It's a nice R movie. It doesn't go over the top though, but that's okay. Not every movie has to go like, oh, he got shot and therefore the head blew up and guts are over. It had like realistic violence. You see enough blood. Not everything has to go overboard with that, and I was fine with that. The action, really, it just builds up to an end action shootout scene. And I do love the one scene where Schwarzenegger picks up a machine gun, and the movie just kind of pauses, like, yes, it's Schwarzenegger, and he has a machine gun, and he just mows everybody down. But, despite its, plot flaws that are really nitpicks, and I'll admit that, they didn't, those little nitpicks that I pointed out, that's all they are. And they didn't bother me while watching it. Because I can just turn it. In a fun movie, you turn off the nitpicks. When you get pissed off at a movie, when a movie is like this boring and uninteresting, that's when nitpicks that are really probably, some of these are probably addressed when people are talking. Like, that's one of the nice advantages of, maybe when we get this on YouTube, DVD, you'll have the commentary and such where directors will actually talk about that. Despite all that, it was a fun enough movie, character-driven enough movie that you liked it, you enjoyed it. It's a nice little fun movie, and it'll be now interesting to see how they pull off with the Expendables 3. Because I always felt like Schwarzenegger's character is kind of weird how they did Schwarzenegger's character in Expendables 2. Because I always got the impression from the first one that Schwarzenegger was running a larger mercenary group, and in the second one he seems to just be by himself. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the third one, but yeah, definitely check this out. I forget what comes out next week. Surprisingly, not a lot of horror movies out. November's looking great though, movie-wise. So if you like the movie, please subscribe, like, comment, everything else. Signing off for now, guys. Bye.